Hello, this is Georgina Rose, part-time esoteric content creator and part-time Scarlet Woman, and welcome back to another video. This is the Darling channel where we discuss religion, mysticism, magic, the occult, and all those lovely topics. And in this video, we're going to be talking all about tarot. Tarot is something that I think a lot of people are familiar with when they start learning about the occult or even before they get into it. I feel like the images of the fortune-telling cards are so iconic in our culture. You've even seen them on Dior's runways recently. They're everywhere, from horror to fashion to culture. But what do they actually mean? A lot of people assume tarot is just about telling the future. Tarot is a card where if you pull it, it'll tell you crazy big answers like, will I get married? Will I die? And will sort of answer all your life questions. And because of that, it's developed stigma where people are quite scared of it. But this is actually a misunderstanding of the real use and power of the cards. The cards are a pictorial key to the universe, meaning that they're a gateway to a large mystic understanding. As well, they can be used to tell the future, but they are much less precise, right? Like, if you pull a card, it will tell a general story, the story of the card, give you potential insights into a situation, but it is not as simple as saying, you're going to die, you're going to get married. There's a much bigger understanding of like what the story of the card means that then gives you possible answers. As well, a lot of people think that tarot is sort of set in stone's understandings of the future. Personally, I believe tarot is what's going to happen so long as you stay on your current course. So pulling a really negative tarot card is less of damnation and more of telling you that you need to change directions on what you're doing so you can make a better choice and have a better outcome. So now that I've explained what exactly tarot is, let's give a little bit of history context because I think that's really helpful. So tarot actually didn't originally begin as fortune telling, it began as a card game in Italy. People would play sort of like gambling games with tarot, and then with time, people started using it for divination. However, modern tarot doesn't really begin until the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. So I did a big video on the Golden Dawn about 2 weeks ago. I'd recommend watching that if you want more context. But basically, the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn was a British magical order, and there was a man named A.E. Waite who developed a modern system of tarot, combining sort of all the big things that the Golden Dawn did. The Golden Dawn tried to syncretize a lot of mystic systems into one sort of paradigm. So tarot was a really good way for them to do that. Tarot is sort of like the flashcards or the Rolodex of mysticism, where you can look at a card and understand a lot of systems at once. The real power of the tarot, I think, is that tarot is loaded with Hermetic Kabbalah, astrological significance, gematria, numerology, and so by looking at one card, you can have a lot of understanding. You can see that there's a Hebrew letter, so if you understand the meaning of the Hebrew letter magically, you can have an insight into the card. You see some astrological glyphs, so if you understand those planets, you can understand that. And you see sort of the imagery, which is sort of the story of the card or the traditional way that a lot of people learn to read, because you can do a lot of reading just based on the imagery and use the imagery to guide you. And then of course the card is numbered. So that corresponds to the meaning of the number. So if you have a grasp of numerology, you can sort of get it there. And as well, the cards have suits, and the suits correspond to different elements. So if you understand the meaning of the 4 elements, you can then understand the card. So if you understand a card's meaning, you can then understand how the Hebrew letter would relate to the element, or how the number would relate to the imagery. So you can kind of learn from one card all these systems. So a tarot card, if you understand a little bit, can be the insight into other mystic systems. A thing that we do in Thelemite is we take the Thoth tarot deck, Crowley's tarot deck. The big difference between the Thoth and the Rider-Waite is that A.E. Waite made the Rider-Waite, which is the more standard deck, and then Aleister Crowley made the Thoth deck. And the Thoth deck changes the correspondences slightly and how Thelema changes correspondence in general, but also syncretizes the I Ching into it. So what you can do with the Thoth cards, which are Crowley's cards that have a Thelemic spin and incorporate the I Ching, is you can lay them out on the Kabbalistic tree of life, and by looking at that tree of life through the cards, you can understand the cards and understand the tree. So they're sort of keys to understanding each other in both directions. There are a few ways of reading tarot. Of course, like, the goal of tarot is to read, but you can read it in a more intuitive way where you sort of just see the feeling of the card to really hack into your intuition, a more esoteric way where you really go off these correspondences that I just described, or a more pictorial way where you're inspired by the imagery. As well, a lot of people read what are called spreads. A really common spread that I think a lot of people begin with, or at least I began with, was the Celtic cross. So when you read tarot in a spread, you can understand how the cards relate to each other and form a story in the reading, so you're not just going off of one card. Because sometimes when you're pulling tarot for yourself based around a question, Let's say your question is, how will my job interview go, right? When you're pulling the cards, sometimes one card can be a little unclear. Maybe you don't really get where it fits in, so using a spread can help give context. As well, pulling things like clarifier cards can give clarification. As well, tarot can be used besides just reading. Since they are so rich in correspondences and symbolism, they can act as a correspondence in a ritual. I've seen people, when they make circles for ritual work, they'll put a card that corresponds to a specific element on each corner, so you can have like an elemental circle, like ready to go even when you're traveling. And as well, I've seen people use them to represent certain deities if they don't have statues on their altar. Like, let's say you want to work with Babylon, you could use the Lust card or the Strength card, which is the Rider-Waite equivalent of the Thoth card, to represent her on your altar if you're traveling or if you can't currently get a statue. You can get professional readers. I suggest, if you want to learn tarot on your own, to get a professional reading so you can see how people actually read as like a groundwork for what a reading can look like, because sometimes when you're like reading about the cards, you can really be unsure on how like a professional reading goes. So I think you can learn a lot from that experience. As well, you can read for yourself. I really suggest, if you want to learn them yourself, to do a daily card pull. So doing these really big spreads, especially because I've seen spreads that incorporate up to the entire deck, can be really overwhelming if you're super new. So I really suggest doing a daily card pull. So you pull the card in the morning, and then you break out your favorite tarot book or your favorite tarot interpretation website, and you read through that, so you learn the cards that way. It takes a long time to learn all the tarot cards. You don't need to memorize them all. As well, I suggest getting away from the white book. So when you get a tarot deck, there tends to be a little white booklet with the meanings of the cards in it. These booklets are cute, they're nice, I'm glad that they're incorporated, but they tend to not have the full meanings of the cards. They tend to be very simplified and very sort of watered down. So I really suggest not just going off of the tarot white book, but going off of websites. Biddy Tarot and tarot.com are really great for beginners. As well, books like 72 Degrees of Wisdom can really help you get those meanings down, or Magickal Tarot by Robyn, Valentine. Like, there's some great books, I'll link some below, that can really help you. Now, some misconceptions about tarot. Tarot cannot predict if you're gonna die. Tarot was not started by the Romani people, nor is it closed. Tarot is completely open. Tarot is as open as it gets. So no, there's no tie there. Tarot is open. Anyone who tells you it's closed is lying to you. As well, tarot is not evil. It doesn't even really involve spirits, right? They're just cards. Cards cannot hurt you. The devil is not going to jump out of the tarot cards and attack you. That'd be cool, but that doesn't happen, so don't worry about that. You can, if you want to communicate with specific spirits. Like, let's say you're new to spirit communication and like invocatory work, you could call a spirit into the cards to communicate through the cards to you, but on their own, they're just cards. So you can do it like that, but you don't have to. Like, a lot of people do messages from the ancestors cards, where they'll sort of call their ancestors into the tarot cards to give them wisdom on something that they're dealing with. But inherently, cards are not like spirit focused or driven. The cards can be used for a lot of things, not just like spirit work and communication. They're not evil. There's nothing scary about them. You don't even have to be like pagan to work with them. Actually, on the cards, there's a lot of Abrahamic symbolism. Specifically in the High Priestess card, we see a lot of Judaic symbolism. We see the Torah scroll, the depiction of the woman is in a very Judaic art style. You see the pomegranates. So it's not even all pagan. There are some cards with a lot of really pagan imagery, but there's also Abrahamic inner imagery, as the modern tarot does come from the Golden Dawn, who sort of blended a lot of things together through an hermetic cosmology. So no, you don't have to be pagan. As well, tarot cards are not witchcraft. I think a lot of people think that all occult things are witchcraft. They're not. Tarot cards are divination. You do not need to be a witch to do divination. I met people who I think would be very offended if you called them a witch who read tarot cards. As well, you can read them more casually. It's not something you need to commit your entire life to read them. There's no need to become a professional tarot reader just because you want to read them. I think in tarot specifically, there's a lot of pressure to become a professional reader to prove that you're good. So I think a lot of people will get into tarot just wanting to kind of improve their life. They'll get really good at it, and they see that all the other people who are really good at it are professional readers. So they become professional readers when they don't really want to, and I think that's really toxic. So if you want to become a professional reader because that's what you want, not just because you think that's what you have to do when you become good at tarot. As well, you don't even have to read for other people. If you prefer to just read for yourself, that's fine, or if you prefer to read for other people only, that's fine. There's a lot of sort of superstitions about like, you can only read for yourself or other people. There's a lot of conflicting ones. But in the end, like, you can do what you want with your tarot cards. You don't have to do one or the other. You can also do both. I do find that reading for other people and reading for yourself is a very different experience and skill set. Like, it takes different things to sort of understand what the other person is thinking and how to interpret it on their behalf versus just interpreting it on your behalf because you know your whole background and sort of what you're thinking. So there is definitely a difference, but neither is superior or better. They're just different ways of reading. As well, you do not need to be given your first tarot deck as a gift. That's sort of like a little superstition, but it's not true. If you want to buy your own tarot deck, you totally can. There's no reason why you can't buy your own tarot deck. If you don't want to buy your own tarot deck, you can have someone buy it for you, but you don't need to be given it as a gift. I gave one of my friends a tarot deck as a gift from me just because I thought it would be cute, but it's not necessary. As well, like, if it was necessary, it would still exclude a lot of people because a lot of people who got into tarot sort of got into it because they wanted to learn on their own rather than being taught by an experienced practitioner. You can buy your own tarot deck. I suggest when you go and buy your first tarot deck to sort of do it intuitively. So like when you're in the store, look around all the decks and go, which one calls for me? Like, which one do I walk here and I feel like that's the one? And that's sort of how you should buy your tarot deck. A lot of people suggest to start with the Rider-Waite. I don't think you need to. I think you should start with what calls to you and what makes you feel the most connected. Though if you want to start with a classic like the Rider-Waite, that's still great. It is a phenomenal deck. If you're looking for decks, you can also read reviews. There are a lot of lovely people who do lots of tarot reviews who can give you sort of background into decks that you might like. Overall, I think tarot is great. I think everyone getting into a spiritual practice seriously should have some form of divination. I think for people into Western esotericism, which most of my audience does lean that way, I think tarot is really perfect because it syncretizes all these big concepts and can help work as like study cards and flashcards to understanding the Western mystery tradition. So I think they're a really great spot for people into that to start with. But you can also do other divination forms. Just know that they work really differently. So this video has been sponsored by GOETIC Impressions. GOETIC Impressions is a ritual supply shop. They're independently run by a lovely group of occultists. They make super affordable supplies, so people who can not necessarily afford like super high-end Enochian supplies can still have access to them. They have this amazing medallion and a whole line of medallions. They have them for every single GOETIC spirit and a ton of the archangels. They have big custom carved candles. They have crystal balls. They have like everything you need for a ceremonial based ritual practice. So if you want to take some of those tarot cards and get into the ceremonial rituals that involve tarot, GOETIC Impressions is a great place to start. And for my audience, I have a special code. Use .darling10 for 10% off your entire purchase so you can get those supplies for cheap. So thank you for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, and ring the bell. And if you're subscribed for 93 days, you will meet your holy guardian angel and you won't ever need to pick up any tarot cards. And you can find me on TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, Patreon, and on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, and YouTube under Occultism with a Side of Salt, and that also has a Patreon. If you want to support me continuing to do this, you can donate directly on Ko-Fi or join my Patreon for extra videos, ritual guides, and all sorts of other lovely things. Thank you for watching, and this has been Doc Darling. Bye!